That is the parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Procurement, Charles Sousa, earlier on this program. His department today announced 2 of the 3 companies behind the development of the much-maligned pandemic border app ArriveCan face additional consequences. GC Strategies, for one, will not be able to bid on any contracts with security requirements because its security status has now been suspended. And the feds are also issuing stop work orders to Cordix Technology Consulting Limited, effectively suspending the firm from continuing any existing contract work. These are the companies, remember, that worked on the app, the cost of which was originally pegged at $80,000 and ballooned to $60 million with barely any paper trail, according to the Auditor General. Let's bring back the front bench, Saeed Selvam, Gary Marr, Kathleen Monk, and Marika Walsh to talk about the political implications, if any, of this. Marika, I'll start with you. Last week, we were talking about Dalian Enterprises, the fact the CEO there had worked for D&D at the same time. I mean, all the contracts now are basically suspended with all of the firms who were in receipt of about 60, well, in different instances, $20 million, $8 million, lots of taxpayer money. Is the drip, drip, drip of this, do you think, politically, like having a political impact?
Absolutely it is. I mean, every day that we are talking about this on your show, every day that there is a committee hearing, every day there is a headline about this, is a day that is more of a headache for the government. And as Saeed said earlier, the government doesn't need more headaches. And, my response when I saw the headline out today is like, what do you mean that's only being done now, right? It's a bit of a question of,
My first question to him,
it's a bit confusing.
Like, why now? What took so long?
What happened, months after Bill Curry first broke this story? I think it's important to note the Auditor General actually can't figure out how much it costs because the paper trail is so thin and non-existent. I think the other issue for the government as an issues management, as a strategy thing, is that just like your scoop last week on the D&D story, where this goes next and the snowball that has already started, that momentum's going, and it's hard to imagine that we have already heard the end of this, and it seems that they are not able to get ahead of it. And I'm not an issues manager. I don't know how they get ahead of it, but so far they have not been able to.
Well, I think, and to Marika's point, I mean, the whole last half of our interview was around accountability. And the ministers are saying there should be accountability, but they're not willing to take any responsibility. And I'm not accusing them of any sort of political intervention or anything. But the fact is, nobody in all of these months or during this whole process seemed to be asking Kathleen, like, what's going on with these companies? Why does this smell bad?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting how you pushed Mr. Sousa at the end of the interview, being like, why aren't the ministers more involved and taking more responsibility? I do think, though, that this scandal overall is, there probably will, as Marika has said, like, there probably will eventually lead to an inquiry of some sort, like a larger inquiry. But I do think it's really different than past scandals. Like I said previously on your question period show, that I don't think it's riddled with political corruption in the same way. But I do think that as contracting out grows in the public service, which it has, transparency has been reduced time and time again. It's true that the numbers haven't come out. The AG couldn't find out how much exactly it cost. But one thing that really stuck out to me in her report was this, that she said the outsourced positions were being paid approximately over $1,000 a day for their work. But the same IT position as a public servant was being paid $675 a day. What that means in terms of math, not my strong suit, but I know that's 60% more. So basically, we were spending 60% more to outsource these positions. And so the question is that a good use of taxpayers' dollar, especially when the ending result, the ArriveCan app, was such a boondoggle disaster to begin with? And so I think that what has to be addressed is the contracting out issue and the fact that we've been gutting the public service in many ways and not managing. It's growing, but it's the management problem. So when we talk about Phoenix,
I got to get everyone in. I only have, I only have a certain number of minutes. Gary, I just wanted to get you to jump in on that, because I think the central issue that both Marika and Kathleen are hitting on is, is there value for taxpayer dollars in contracting out, and do voters care?
So the short answer is yes, there can be value in contracting out. But what we've seen, the trend line since 2015, is that, somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 new civil servants are being added to the rolls to increase the bureaucracy, while at the same time, the amount of contracts let out have gone up dramatically. So, I mean, let's go back to just the one in particular, GC Strategies. I mean, they've done contracts for, about $100 million over the last 10 years. That's a significant amount of money. And, it seems to me that if you increase the number of people in your civil service, there should be an inverse relationship with the amount of contracting out that you do. But in this case, both have gone up at the same time. So can you get value out of outsourced contract? The answer is yes. But as Parliamentary Secretary Sousa said, you got to have transparency. You've got to have accountability. Those things seem to be absent from the procurement process overall. It's not just this this one app that we're talking about. It's procurement in the military is particularly bad. I mean, I can't think of procurement of vaccines was particularly bad. So there's many examples. I agree with Kathleen that there will probably be something in the way of a greater examination of the procurement practices of government, because done well, it can provide terrific value to taxpayers, but it has not been done well by this government.
And I think politically, the context around, Saeed, the cost of living crisis and the value of every dollar we send the government is maybe more at the forefront of people's cognizance at this point than it would have been a number of years ago. Mm-hmm.
Especially now. And that's the thing. During 2020, during that historic pandemic, as you know, it was chaos. People were trying to figure out what to do and how to do it. And the federal government was spending a lot of money. That included ArriveCan, that included serve payments. And when it comes to looking at this issue in hindsight, the issue is that, of course, mistakes were made. And I think the government is wearing that right now. But again, timing-wise, when all of this news comes out roughly at the same time, during a cost of living crisis, the big challenge is that they're wearing it and it is spreading. And again, it's easy for the opposition to kind of dig into this and basically say, look, this is just another ethical misstep from the federal Liberals. So I think that there is opportunity to kind of move on from this, which is what I think the federal government is trying to do at this point in time. But it really calls into question not just procurement practices, but the issue of procurement overall. I mean, at the end of the day, federal government contracting and procurement processes were designed so that this type of incident doesn't happen. I think the government has to really continue to reiterate that this was during, quote unquote, the fog of war, essentially. Not that there's any excuse for it, but I think that they're trying their best to move forward at this point. And that's the best they can do.